Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. And my good friend Mayur, he is the founder at Arcana. Mayur, before we get too deep into Arcana, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into this Web3 space? I.e., what is your come to crypto moment?
I actually been working in tech for 20 years now, I guess, right out of college. I've always really enjoyed working at the confluence of tech, design, and business. I felt like those are my strong suits. Uh, I fancy myself a generalist, if that's even a thing. And uh, this, so I was just basically done a whole bunch of jobs, worked primarily on the product side because that helped me work at the confluence of these three things that I really liked. And it was back in 2017 that in my day job where we were working um, basically software consulting, and there were people who started to come to us. This was back in Bangalore, India, where people started to ask us more and more about if we could help them build blockchain products and stuff on Bitcoin and things like that. And we had no clue what these people were talking about. And then that's when I started to dive in a bit. And then that's also the time when the first set of exchanges started opening up in India. And we, that's basically my first introduction to cryptocurrencies as such. And yeah, so back in 2017, got in for during the ICO mania, got in for all the shit coins, but eventually stayed for the tech.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about the ecosystem in India? Is crypto adoption very high there? I know it is in places like Singapore, but I'm unfamiliar with the Indian market. So educate us a little bit on what crypto is like in India and whether the government is relatively, amenable to it.
Yeah, so the crypto market as such, I mean, amongst the general public, there is a lot of skepticism, and that's because there is a, a lot of uh, sensationalism around crypto related uh, hacks or uh, fraud and those sorts of things, and which do happen in almost every space of life where there is a buck to be made. And because of that reason, people are generally wary. But there is a younger class of individuals, I would say, people under 20, 20s to 30s, who are essentially now in the working class, have are essentially earning money and look at crypto as a potential asset class within a portfolio of investments that they would like to make. In Indian culture, it's very typical for you to save a portion of your salary, not basically live month to month. This is sort of handed down generation after generation. And because of that culture of wanting to save money, make investments, and India as such in TradFi has seen such a phenomenal growth over the past 10 years or so. So people are now looking at crypto as a high risk sort of asset class that they wouldn't mind committing say 5%, maybe 10% of their savings portfolio, however small that might be, to something like crypto. So there is that desire, and it's a desire that keeps growing. But you do have regulations from the government that actually look to counter this sort of growth, because they're very worried, and perhaps rightly so, uh, about basically investor protection. Um, and this is something that India, being India, and the slightly conservative approach to almost everything that is new and innovative, we I think the first steps here are extremely cautious. But there is a desire amongst the more urban sort of like middle class that definitely is that is exposed to cryptocurrencies understands them fairly well, and there is that desire to kind of look at it as an asset class for purely speculative reasons at the very least.
Absolutely. So now tell us a little bit about Arcana and the mission there. What are you guys trying to accomplish?
Yeah, so at Arcana, we've been through quite the journey. We started in 2021, and for us, it has always been about like simplifying things for people who want to start adopting Web3. So, on a very philosophical note, we we personally want for Web3 and the blockchain decentralization ethos to really like catch on and catch on in a way that makes sense and is it's not only about speculative assets. It's a real piece of innovative technology that can serve very many purposes. And I think for that to happen, we need to kind of make it simpler for people who who basically build products and consume these products. So at Arcana, we like to think of ourselves as being in the business of abstraction, which is essentially, we want to hide away the complexities. For too long, I think we've sort of been caught up in wanting to, uh, you know, uh, like let the complexities shine. Look at this really cool piece of tech that I've built, and people when they explain these products are also using so much jargon that it really is not consumer friendly at all. And uh, if that's our starting point, then you can imagine how these products are end up getting built, right? We sit here in our little echo chamber thinking that we oh, you want to use this Web3 product, you should have a wallet, and of course you need to have a wallet. uh, and but 99% of the world doesn't know what a wallet is, right? So I think we're now slowly stepping out of our echo chamber, looking at what are the trade-offs that need to be made in order to be able to actually attract users and high quality builders to build high quality applications. And I think we are at a place right now where we can make that happen. We want to play our role in making that happen as well.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about, what from like a user perspective or a company perspective, like what is the actual underlying product? So obviously making things a little easier education wise, but talk to us like what is Arcana?
So, like I said, we like to say that we are in the business of abstractions. So,
Mm.
the first product we put out in 2023 was a wallet slash private key abstraction
Mm.
SDK. Essentially, it's an SDK developers integrate into their apps. And then what that allows is that users of those apps can essentially sign in to those apps with just their email or a
Mm.
social account. And the Arcana network basically does this cryptographic scheme to give this user a wallet right within the app. And now anyone who heard of a certain app and just wanted to use it need not have to have had a wallet and a private key and remember a seed phrase and all of those sorts of things. It's given to them, right? So this is wallet seed phrase abstraction. So what that got is essentially people through the front door. So from landing page to home page, it reduced the friction and got that time down to a matter of a few seconds. The next product we released was our gas abstraction SDK. So now the point was we got people to the home page. How do we get them to checkout? Right. So checkout usually involves like a series of interactions that users would have to perform in order to kind of make selections, make choices, etc., etc. And in a typical Web3 application, that would involve having to expend gas to be able to kind of interact with the app and those sorts of things, right? So we built this SDK where the developer of the app could essentially sponsor these transactions because gas is in inevitability in a sense. And so now the developers can sponsor these transactions and now get the user from homepage to checkout. So these were the first set of products that we launched. And now we're focusing on what we think is like the almost like the final frontier for uh, like user experience in Web3. This will hopefully open up the floodgates, and this is chain abstraction. So the point is now how we've gotten people from landing page to homepage to checkout. How do we get them to pay and pay easily? Now, Jax, you're of course you've been in this space long enough, and so you know, and I'm sure you have this problem where you have your MetaMask, for example, and someone comes and tells you there's this. This is a bit of a flimsy example, but someone comes and tells you there's this new meme coin, and it's absolutely going to rip. This is my piece of alpha to you, and this meme coin is on base, and you're like, okay, cool. You go check out Dex Screener, everything checks out. Market cap's low right now, but there's a lot of buzz, and you go to this Dex on base, whatever it may be, aerodrome or something like that, and uh, now what you realize is that you have no ETH or USDC or whatever you need to be able to buy this on base. Right? You don't have the gas token, you don't have the stable coin, whatever it may be. And now you have to go to the painful process of perhaps bridging your tokens from one to another, etc., and do all of these sorts of things. So, in which time, the market cap could have like 3x, 5x, 10. You're already, that opportunity is sort of lost. So, how do you kind of solve for this? Now, this is just one part of the problem. This is going to get exacerbated even more so because we're not talking only about Arbitrum, Optimism, Base, Polygon. We're talking about the 40 other L2s that are in existence live today as per L2 beat, and the 50 others that are going to come in the next quarter or so. And this number is only going to keep going higher and higher with this modular chain hypothesis that's really gaining a lot of speed, right? So Ethereum has basically said scalability, how we scale Ethereum is downwards, is on the L2, is on the L3s. And this Ethereum is no longer going to be like the execution layer in a sense. It's going to be the settlement layer. So if we believe that this hypothesis is going to hold true, and we're going to see all these various sorts of roll-ups, L2s, app chains, whatever you want to call them, proliferate and grow in numbers, hundreds if, and thousands perhaps, over the next few quarters, perhaps years, then you're going to end up with more and more fragmentation of these assets that you hold, right? USDC is going to be on all of these chains, and you need USDC on all of these chains. So today, we speak to traders often, and they tell us, "Oh no, we don't need any sort of help because I make sure I have my tokens on every chain." But how are you going to have tokens on 50, on 100, on more, right? So this is simply untenable. So what you're building right now is essentially a way for you to be able to kind of aggregate all your, say, stablecoin balances across all of these chains and be able to spend them as one aggregated unit on any other chain that you want, right? So I could hold, say, ETH on Arbitrum, Optimism, Ethereum, Base, whatever, but I want to spend it now on Avalanche, right, as a whole. And I should be able to do that, essentially, right? So that is what we're building. That's what really gets us excited. And I think if we do this really kind of, really opens up the doors for real mass adoption, in a sense.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of, and people can go back to certain episodes. Metapool is a good example. Particle, the
Yeah.
team at who else? Moonwell, that'd be a good example of this. So we're talking about chain abstraction, this idea that like the user, at the end of the day, my mom doesn't care if your servers are on AWS or on Google Cloud. She just wants it to work, and all she knows is that it works. and you guys provide SDKs to facilitate people being able to do activities on different chains. So let's talk a little bit about the underlying mechanisms of how you make this work. Is it you guys
Yeah.
have well-defined bridging relationships? Is it like talk to us a little bit about like how this fundamentally works?
Okay. So there's a great example that uses a Web2 analogy. So there is this remittance company called Wise, right? I'm sure you've heard of it, and perhaps you know how it operates. But this explains it beautifully. So I have a bank account with XYZ Bank, let's say HSBC, whatever. You have, and I reside in Dubai, UAE. You live in some part of America, perhaps. You have a Citibank account, and if I wanted to send you X dollars, then that would go on the international remittance rails, essentially SWIFT and whatnot, right? And that takes its own sweet time for all of that to happen. But if I used Wise, then you instantly get this whatever dollars that you need to get. And the way Wise does it is that they have a local bank in UAE. They have a local bank in 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 America. I need to go. I deposit my money in AED dirhams in the local bank that Wise uses, and the local bank then contacts the local bank in America and says, "Hey, so I've gotten this money, it converts to these many dollars at the current rate. You need to kind of give Jax these many dollars." And it's just one guy picking up the phone and saying, "This is what happened," and you get the funds from your local bank, and all of this happens in a matter of minutes or maximum a few hours compared to days on the Swift network. So this is how precisely how chain abstraction is, where I have, let's say, USDC on chain A, but want to spend it on chain B. We collect the Arcana network. Essentially, it's a protocol that collects your funds, your USDC on chain A, informs a solver network, essentially, or a filler network, whatever you want to call it, which is basically a set of liquidity providers that a collection has been made. And for a certain fee, these fillers and solvers are going to supply me the USDC I need on chain B in almost real time. It's near instant. And that then allows me to do exactly what we explained earlier. There's a meme coin that is really doing well on base. I don't have the funds, but if I can basically offer up my funds on Optimism and Arbitrum, collate that, and get that on the on base, then I can instantly go and buy.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. So let's talk about some of the integrations you guys have already done. I think we saw an Aave demo and a Uniswap demo. So talk to us a little bit about some of the, I guess we'll call them partnerships or things you guys have already done with this train abstraction.
Yeah, so we've done 3 demos so far. The fourth one should come out tomorrow. That's an exciting one too. So the first one we did was on Aave, where essentially you held funds on Optimism, and you wanted to supply USDC on Arbitrum on Aave, essentially LP, uh, basically lend some USDC because they were giving 6% APY, and in basically a click of a button, and in under 15 seconds, the user was able to essentially supply this liquidity to Aave and get the LP tokens and basically start earning the APY. And no bridging needed, one button click essentially, waited for 15 odd seconds, done. Our next demo was one Uniswap, where essentially I held funds on Arbitrum and Optimism, and I wanted to swap USDC that I held on these two chains for ETH, and I wanted to do more than I held on the Arbitrum chain. Essentially, let's say I held 10 USDC on Optimism, 10 on Arbitrum, and I wanted to swap uh, USDC on Arbitrum from basically for ETH on Arbitrum. And I could spend the entire 20 in order to get the ETH that I wanted. So this was again a very seamless experience. One button click, 9 seconds, I think, is what it took on mainnet for all of this to happen, for me to lock up my funds, for me to get the liquidity I needed, and then essentially spend it, do the swap, get the ETH. And the third and most recent demo we did was on Polymarket, which is a very interesting one because essentially Polymarket, what it does is it's obviously the most widely used DApp in Web3 as of now, and it only allows you to place bets if you've deposited USDC on Polygon and ETH. And if you didn't have them on either of these chains, you have to essentially bridge them over and make the deposit to go forward. And so this is the exact same thing that we did. I had some USDC on Arbitrum, Optimism. I pooled all of that and was able to deposit them onto my deposit address, which was on Polygon. Once I deposited it, I was able to kind of start placing my bets on who will be the next president of America. And it was all in a matter of seconds. And again, just one click. So these are the sort of things that we can start to make happen. And you can see that, from here, it's possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about some of the unique selling points that kind of differentiate Arcana's chain abstraction protocol from other solutions in the market. So talk to us a little bit about like the differentiators.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things here, right? So all of this sounds like, magical, probably even straightforward. Hopefully, I've done a good job of explaining it. But fundamentally, the none of this works if the system isn't capital efficient, and this is something that a lot of people essentially miss. A lot of people in the space, obviously, chain abstraction is all the rage right now, and it's quite a hot narrative. So everyone's trying to jump onto the bandwagon. But a very crucial aspect of all of this is the capital efficiency of the system. Because if you presume that you will find people to provide this liquidity and that they will provide this liquidity at rates that work for the end user, then you are being a bit foolhardy because that is not a given and not by a long shot. So it is extremely important for you to very deeply look at the solving side of this, the essentially the people who will provide this front this liquidity, and you need to kind of make certain very important calls with respect to what would help these people reduce their costs in order to be able to participate in a system like this. Because reducing those costs will basically result in lower fees, and that lower fees then can stream down to all stakeholders, us, the end user, other participants within the entire protocol. And this, I think, is something that will set us apart once we go live later this year.
And let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges you guys face, because I'm sure this is not easy to put together and kind of how you guys overcame them.
So the biggest challenges are, of course, making the right calls in terms of the trade-off. So, like, this is something that I've strongly believed, or I've come to believe in Web3, is that uh, there are trade-offs to be made at literally every step when you are building a product in this space. And usually, what happens is, and these trade offs are daunting because they can make or break you. So, usually, what happens is that you then shift over these sort of like responsibilities to the user and say, hey, I'm being extremely unopinionated. You decide, and consequently, you bear the risk of everything that's going to happen here on in. And that is really not how you build consumer products. And you go around looking at every Web2 product, it's literally like hand holding, spoon feeding, and making all the noise go away. These are extremely opinionated products, and they want to elicit certain behavior from you, and they succeed because they are opinionated. And this, I think, is the biggest challenge of deciding at what step in your product or protocol development journey do you make these calls of being extremely opinionated, and then these calls have to then pay off because they're extremely risky. And but not making these calls will just make you, it's like the it's like the bell curve, right? Essentially, you will end up right in the middle, which is precisely where you don't want to end up. So you either make an extremely sophisticated product for a niche audience, or you make a very, very simple product that's extremely opinionated and says, this is how I think things should work. And in the absence of standards, I think that's the way to go, and that's the most challenging part.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about any upcoming milestones you all have that people can look forward to.
So yeah, we've been doing demos, and I think it's time for us to come kind of get out of demo mode. We have a couple more that we are quite excited about. But all of these are like fillers going into our like essentially our private beta and our public beta that will come out very, very soon. Hopefully sometime early next month. We want to start putting this product into people's hands. We want to get them to start trying it out. So yeah, that's our next big milestone where we'll release the beta. We'll allow people to actually use it with mainnet assets. We will be limiting how much you can actually transact because this is beta, and despite all the warnings, people might still end up trying to do really high value stuff, and we don't want people to lose their money. So this is going to come to people's hands very soon for them to start testing and trying. And towards the end of this year is when we want to do a full version 1.0 with a mainnet of the Arcana L1 happening later this year. So these are the two big milestones, and then we'll see how things go from there.
Well, very excited. I'm sure everyone's going to want to try it out. So let's talk a little bit about where people can find you guys online and interact and kind of stay abreast of all these updates.
Yeah, so the best place to find us is Twitter and Telegram. We are at Arcana Network in both places, on Telegram and Twitter. You can also just go to our website. It has the links to all our socials. It's arcana.network. And if you go there, you'll find all the official links. You can hit us up on any of these channels. We'll respond. I'm personally available on Twitter as well. You can just look me up. I'm at Mayur Relekar. And my DMs are open. Always looking forward to talking to interesting people and finding synergies.
Amazing. Well, everyone go get involved. Go follow everyone on social media, and to all the builders in Web3, let's continue to work on chain abstraction. Thank you so much for coming on the Building Web3 podcast.
Thanks, Jax. Pleasure being here.